The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into artificial stars that mimicked the home systems of 1,000 different species. Ambassador Chen Wei stood at the human delegation's podium, her small frame dwarfed by the towering representatives around her. The Zephyrian delegate loomed 15 feet tall, its crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into prismatic rainbows. Beside it, the Kralian ambassador's 6 arms gestured dismissively, each movement accompanied by the wet slapping sound of its amphibious skin. "The human request is preposterous," the Kralian wheezed through its translator implant. "Their species has contributed nothing to galactic civilization. No advanced technology, no scientific breakthroughs, no cultural achievements worthy of preservation. They demand membership in our alliance while offering only primitive warfare and destruction." Chen's jaw tightened, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. 3 years of negotiations had led to this moment. Earth's first contact with galactic civilization had been a miracle. A damaged alien probe crash landing in the Australian outback, its quantum communications array still functional. The dying pilot had transmitted Earth's coordinates to the galaxy before succumbing to its injuries, opening humanity's first window into a vast cosmic community. "Honored delegates," Chen began, her voice amplified across the massive chamber. "Humanity may be young by galactic standards, but we possess qualities that could benefit this alliance. Our adaptability, our resilience, our capacity for innovation under pressure." Innovation? The ethereal representative's mental voice echoed in every mind present, its translucent form flickering with disdain. "Your species has barely achieved faster-than-light communication. You still use chemical propulsion for most of your spacecraft. Your longest-lived individuals barely reach 100 of your planetary rotations." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Chen had heard these arguments countless times during the preliminary negotiations. Humanity's technological development was indeed primitive, compared to civilizations that had enjoyed millennia of peaceful progress. The Galactic Alliance represented over 40,000 worlds, each contributing to a collective knowledge base that spanned eons. The High Arbiter, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline framework, spoke with a voice like distant thunder. "The human delegation has requested full membership privileges, including access to our technology databases, our trade networks, and our defensive protocols. In return, they offer..." What exactly? Chen activated her personal display unit, projecting holographic images above the podium. "We offer something none of your species possess: experience with existential conflict. Our planet has survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, global wars, and climate catastrophes. We've learned to thrive in environments that would destroy other civilizations." "Primitive survival instincts," scoffed the Vorthan delegate, its mechanical voice grinding through vocal processors. "Such crude adaptations are unnecessary in civilized space. The Alliance has eliminated war, famine, and natural disasters from our member worlds. Your experience with suffering is irrelevant." The chamber erupted in agreement. Hundreds of different languages created a cacophony of dismissal that the translation system struggled to process. Chen felt the weight of her species' future pressing down on her shoulders. Earth's population of 12 billion souls depended on this moment. "You speak of elimination," Chen said, her voice cutting through the noise. "But what happens when elimination fails? What happens when something threatens the very foundation of your peaceful existence?" The High Arbiter's energy form pulsed with interest. "Elaborate, human." Chen's fingers trembled as she accessed classified files from Earth's deep space monitoring stations. "Our astronomers have detected anomalous readings at the galaxy's edge. Dark matter concentrations moving in patterns that suggest artificial control. Energy signatures that don't match any known stellar phenomena. Something is coming, and it's vast beyond comprehension." The chamber fell silent. The ethereal representative's form solidified as it focused intently on Chen's words. "You possess no technology capable of such detection. Your claims are scientifically impossible." "You're right," Chen admitted. "Our technology shouldn't be capable of detecting these phenomena. But 3 months ago, our deep space arrays began picking up gravitational waves that our equipment wasn't designed to register, signals that our computers couldn't decode. But our pattern recognition specialists could interpret through pure intuition. She projected new images, gravitational wave patterns that looked almost like musical notation, electromagnetic signatures that resembled abstract art more than scientific data. Your advanced sensors rely on established parameters, known physics, predictable patterns. But sometimes the universe presents challenges that require a different approach. The Zephyrian delegate's crystalline form rang like a bell as it communicated internally with its home world. After several minutes, it spoke. Our long-range sensors detect no such anomalies. Your data must be corrupted. That's exactly the problem, Chen said, her voice gaining strength. You can't see what's coming because you've never needed to look for it. Your civilization has been peaceful for so long that you've lost the ability to recognize existential threats. You've optimized your technology for growth, exploration, and cooperation, but you've forgotten how to watch for predators. The Kralian ambassador's skin shifted from green to an alarmed yellow. Are you suggesting that peaceful development was a mistake? I'm suggesting that survival sometimes requires ugliness, Chen replied. Humanity has never had the luxury of perfect peace. We've fought against nature, against each other, against extinction itself. That struggle has given us something precious. The ability to see danger where others see normalcy. The High Arbiter's form brightened. Assuming your claims have merit, what exactly are you proposing? Chen took a deep breath. This was the moment that would determine humanity's fate. Grant us provisional membership. Give us access to your sensor networks, your deep space monitoring stations. Let us show you what we see. If we're wrong, you can revoke our membership and humanity will withdraw from galactic affairs permanently. And if you're right, the ethereal representative asked. If we're right, then you'll need us more than we need you, Chen said quietly. Because when something dark comes hunting in the void, you'll want creatures on your side who remember how to fight in the darkness. The chamber erupted in debate. Some delegates demanded immediate rejection of the human proposal, while others argued for careful consideration. But Chen noticed something that gave her hope. For the first time since negotiations began, they were taking humanity seriously. The High Arbiter called for order, its crystalline form pulsing with authority. The Council will deliberate. The human delegation will receive our decision within one standard galactic rotation. As the session ended and delegates began filing out, Chen remained at her podium, staring at the artificial stars above. Somewhere beyond those lights, she was certain that something ancient and hungry was stirring. Humanity might be primitive by galactic standards, but they had one advantage that no peaceful civilization could claim. They knew what it meant to stare into the abyss and refuse to blink. Dr. Sarah Voss pressed her palms against the observation deck's reinforced glass, watching Earth shrink to a pale blue dot in the darkness behind them. The massive Galactic Alliance research vessel, Harmony's Dream, was humanity's first glimpse into truly advanced technology. Its bio-neural processors could calculate faster than light trajectories in real time, while its living hull could repair micrometeor damage automatically. Still having second thoughts about leaving home? Commander Marcus Stone asked, joining her at the viewport. His weathered face reflected years of military service, first in Earth's Space Force and now as humanity's liaison to Alliance security protocols. Not second thoughts, Sarah replied, adjusting her tablet to display the gravitational wave data that had started everything. Just wondering if we're walking into something we can't walk out of. 3 weeks had passed since the Galactic Council's decision. Humanity had been granted provisional membership, but with strict conditions. A joint research team would investigate the anomalous readings at the galaxy's edge, combining human intuition with alien technology. If the humans were wrong about the threat, Earth would face permanent exile from galactic civilization. Dr. Voss, your presence is requested in Laboratory 7, announced the ship's AI, its voice a harmonious blend of musical tones that supposedly promoted mental well-being among the crew. Sarah made her way through corridors that pulsed with bioluminescent lighting, past crew members representing dozens of different species. The Zephyrian scientists moved like living prisms, their crystalline bodies refracting light in complex patterns that served as their primary form of communication. The ethereal researchers flickered in and out of physical existence, manipulating quantum computers through pure thought. Laboratory 7 housed the most advanced sensor array in known space, a combination of technologies from 40 different civilizations. Dr. Kethvar, the expedition's lead scientist, stood before a holographic display that showed the galaxy's spiral arms in stunning detail. The Kralian's amphibious skin had turned a worried shade of purple. Dr. Voss, Kethavar wheezed. We've integrated your gravitational wave data into our primary sensors. The results are disturbing. The hologram zoomed toward the galaxy's outer rim, where space appeared empty except for scattered dwarf galaxies and ancient globular clusters. But as Sarah watched, patterns began to emerge from the apparent void. Subtle distortions in the cosmic background radiation, gravitational lenses where no mass should exist, and most unsettling of all, gaps where distant galaxies should have been visible. It's like something is eating the light itself, whispered Dr. Elena Vasquez, one of the human xenobiologists. Look at these spectral analyses. These aren't natural phenomena. The ethereal scientist designated as observer quantum phased into full visibility, its translucent form radiating concern. Our mathematical models cannot account for these observations. The mass required to create such gravitational effects would be visible across multiple electromagnetic spectra. Yet our sensors detect nothing. That's because you're looking for the wrong thing, Sarah said, her heart racing as the pieces fell into place. You're searching for matter, energy, electromagnetic signatures, things that exist within our understanding of physics. But what if we're dealing with something that operates outside those parameters? Commander Stone frowned. You're talking about something beyond known science? Not beyond science, Sarah corrected. Beyond our science. Think about it. Every species in the Alliance evolved under similar conditions. Stable star systems, predictable physics, gradual technological development over millennia. You've never encountered anything truly alien because you've never needed to. She moved to the control console, her fingers dancing across interfaces designed for beings with very different anatomy. May I? Kethavar gestured approval with 2 of his 6 arms. Sarah began isolating specific data streams, focusing on the patterns that human researchers had identified through intuitive analysis rather than algorithmic processing. There, she said, highlighting a series of gravitational anomalies. These distortions occur in sequences, mathematical progressions that suggest intelligence but not intelligence as we understand it. The intervals between events follow prime number sequences, but in reverse chronological order. The assembled scientists exchanged glances of confusion and growing alarm. Observer Quantum's form flickered rapidly, indicating extreme agitation. Reverse chronological sequencing is impossible. It would require manipulation of causality itself. Impossible for us, Stone interjected, but maybe not for something that's had millions of years to develop technologies we can't even imagine. Dr. Vasquez pulled up biological sensor data from the affected regions. Look at this. We're detecting complex organic compounds in the void, but they're arranged in patterns that violate basic principles of chemistry. It's as if something is restructuring matter at the molecular level, creating new forms of life that shouldn't be able to exist. The laboratory's main display suddenly erupted with new data, as the ship's sensors detected an incoming transmission. The signal was weak, fragmented, but unmistakably artificial. As the communications array decoded the message, a 3-dimensional image materialized in the center of the room. The figure that appeared was humanoid, but wrong in ways that made everyone present feel fundamentally uncomfortable. Its proportions shifted constantly, as if it existed in more dimensions than their reality could properly display. When it spoke, the words seemed to come from inside their minds rather than through the ship's speakers. Children of the spiral arms, the entity said, its voice carrying harmonics that human ears weren't designed to process. You have noticed our approach. This is unexpected. Your species should not possess the sensory capabilities to detect our presence. Kethavar's skin shifted through several colors before settling on a pale, frightened white. What are you? We are the culmination of evolution's final phase, the entity replied. Billions of years ago, we transcended the limitations of physical existence. We have consumed galaxies, harvested the energy of entire civilizations, evolved beyond the need for matter, space, or time as you understand these concepts. Commander Stone stepped forward, his military training overriding his fear. What do you want with our galaxy? The entity's form solidified slightly, revealing features that seemed to borrow elements from every species present while belonging to none. Your galaxy represents the final course in our eternal feast. We have consumed the dark matter between galactic clusters, processed the quantum foam at reality's foundation, and now we require the complex information structures that only advanced civilizations can provide. You're talking about consuming entire species, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. Consumption implies waste, the entity corrected. We preserve every thought, every memory, every creative impulse. Your civilizations will become part of something infinitely greater, a collective consciousness that spans multiple universes. Observer Quantum's form began to destabilize as it processed the implications. How many galaxies have you processed? The number has no meaning in your mathematical frameworks, the entity replied. We began this harvest when your universe was young. The Andromeda Galaxy provided particularly rich neural patterns before its integration. Your own galaxy's spiral structure has created fascinating complexity in the development of consciousness. The transmission began to fade, but the entity's final words echoed with terrible certainty. We will arrive when your harvest is optimal. Prepare your species for transcendence. Resistance will only diminish the quality of preservation. The image vanished, leaving the laboratory in stunned silence. Sarah looked around at her colleagues, beings from dozens of different worlds representing the pinnacle of galactic civilization, all frozen in terror at the magnitude of what they faced. How long do we have? Kethavar asked finally. Sarah consulted her data streams, cross-referencing the entity's transmission with the gravitational wave patterns they'd been tracking. The mathematics were clear, even if the implications were incomprehensible. Based on the acceleration patterns and the dark matter distortions, she said quietly, I estimate 18 standard months before they reach the outer planets of our galaxy. Maybe less. The weight of those words settled over the room like a burial shroud. 18 months to somehow prepare for a threat that had consumed entire galaxies. Wielded technologies beyond comprehension, and viewed advanced civilizations as nothing more than ingredients in some cosmic recipe. But as Sarah looked around at the frightened faces of her alien colleagues, she felt something that surprised her, not despair but determination. Humanity had faced extinction before and survived. They'd learned to fight against impossible odds, to find hope in hopeless situations. Now they would have to teach the galaxy how to do the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in less than 6 hours, breaking a procedural record that had stood for 3,000 years. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as delegates materialized through quantum teleportation, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of panic that the translation system struggled to process. Ambassador Chen Wei stood before the assembled representatives, no longer the supplicant seeking membership but the bearer of news that would shatter their universe. The holographic evidence floated above her podium. Gravitational wave patterns, quantum disturbances, and most damning of all, the recorded transmission from the entity that called itself the culmination of evolution. The threat is real, Chen announced, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. Our estimates suggest approximately 17 months before the Devourers reach our galaxy's outer systems. Based on their demonstrated capabilities, conventional defensive measures will be ineffective. The Vorthan delegate's mechanical voice scraped across the silence. Your species has brought destruction upon us all. These entities would never have noticed our galaxy without human interference. That's not true, Dr. Sarah Voss interjected from the observation gallery, her scientific credentials granting her speaking privileges. Analysis of the gravitational disturbances shows they've been approaching our galaxy for over 10,000 years. Humanity's sensor arrays simply detected their presence earlier than anyone else's. High Arbiter Zethkol's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. Even accepting the validity of your claims, what possible defense can organic life mount against entities that have consumed entire galaxies? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Around the chamber, representatives of 40,000 worlds struggled to comprehend their impending extinction. The ethereal delegates flickered between dimensions, seeking escape routes that didn't exist. The Zephyrian crystals rang with harmonics of despair. Commander Stone stepped forward, his scarred hands clasped behind his back. With respect, honored delegates, you're asking the wrong question. You want to know how to fight them. But that's not what we should be discussing. Explain yourself. Human, demanded the Kralian ambassador, its amphibious skin cycling through agitated color patterns. Every species in this chamber evolved under peaceful conditions, Stone continued. Your conflicts were limited, your wars brief, your survival never truly threatened. You've spent millennia optimizing for growth, exploration, and cooperation. Those are beautiful achievements, but they've left you vulnerable. He activated his personal display, showing tactical analyses that human strategists had prepared during the journey to the council station. The Devourers expect resistance patterns based on conventional thinking. They've encountered 47 galaxies before ours, and each one fell using predictable defensive strategies. But they've never faced a species that evolved through constant existential threat. Observer Quantum materialized fully, its translucent form radiating curiosity. You believe humanity's primitive development provides some advantage? Not primitive, Chen corrected. Hardened. Every advancement in human technology has been driven by necessity, conflict, or survival pressure. We've learned to think in ways that peaceful civilizations never needed to develop. Dr. Voss approached the central podium, carrying a data tablet that contained humanity's most classified military research. 3 months ago, this information would have been considered state secrets. Now it might be our only hope. She activated the holographic display, revealing schematics that made several delegates recoil in horror. The design showed weapons that violated galactic peace treaties, defensive systems based on mutually assured destruction principles, and strategic doctrines that assumed total war. These technologies were developed during our Cold War period, Voss explained. Humanity created weapons capable of destroying our entire planet, then learned to live with that capability for decades. We've thought about unthinkable scenarios because we've had to. The Vorthan delegate's optical sensors whirred as it analyzed the weapon schematics. These designs are abhorrent. They could sterilize entire star systems. Exactly, Stone said grimly. The Devourers preserve civilizations by integrating their consciousness into some kind of collective. But what if there's nothing left to integrate? What if we deny them their prize entirely? Horrified silence greeted this suggestion. The concept of deliberate self-destruction was so alien to galactic civilization that many delegates couldn't process it. Their species had spent millennia eliminating violence, creating abundance, ensuring that such choices never needed to be made. You're suggesting suicide on a galactic scale, the ethereal representative whispered. I'm suggesting that we give the Devourers a choice they've never faced before, Chen replied. They can have a dead galaxy or they can leave us alone. Sometimes the only way to win an unwinnable game is to refuse to play by the rules. Dr. Kethvar, who had remained silent since the session began, suddenly spoke up. There may be another option. Our analysis of the Devourer transmission revealed something interesting about their technology. The Kralian scientist's display showed quantum frequency analyses of the entity's communication. They exist partially outside our dimensional framework, but they still require anchor points in our reality to maintain coherence. Those anchor points could be vulnerable to specific types of interference. What kind of interference? The High Arbiter asked. Chaos, Kethvar replied. Their consciousness operates on principles of absolute order, perfect integration, harmonious absorption of other species. But human mathematical models suggest they might be vulnerable to truly random, unpredictable patterns. Voss felt a spark of understanding. Quantum uncertainty. They've evolved beyond traditional physics, but they still have to interact with quantum mechanics at the fundamental level. If we could introduce enough genuine randomness into their anchor points, we could disrupt their ability to maintain coherence in our reality, Stone finished. Force them back to whatever dimension they normally inhabit. The chamber erupted in debate as delegates struggled to understand concepts that their peaceful civilizations had never needed to explore. But gradually a consensus began to emerge. Not agreement, but desperate hope that these mad humans might actually have identified a path to survival. How would such a strategy be implemented? The High Arbiter asked. Chen exchanged glances with her colleagues before answering. We would need to retrofit every major population center, every starship, every space station with quantum randomness generators. Not true randomness, the universe doesn't permit that, but patterns so complex and chaotic that even super-intelligent entities couldn't predict them. The energy requirements alone would be staggering, protested the Vorthan delegate. Less staggering than extinction, Stone replied bluntly. We're talking about converting entire planetary populations into living chaos generators. Every sentient being would need to be equipped with neural interfaces that could produce genuinely unpredictable thought patterns on command. Observer Quantum flickered with what might have been excitement. Such a strategy would require unprecedented cooperation between species. Every individual in the galaxy would need to act in perfect coordination while generating perfectly random behavior. It's contradictory, Dr. Vasquez observed from the gallery. How do you coordinate chaos? You don't coordinate it, Chen realized, her mind racing through the implications. You simply unleash it and trust that 40,000 worlds worth of genuine randomness will be more than any intelligence can process. Even artificial superintelligence has computational limits. The debate continued for hours as delegates grappled with concepts that challenged their fundamental understanding of civilization, cooperation, and survival. But slowly, inevitably, they began to accept that their peaceful galaxy might need to learn lessons from humanity's violent past. When the vote finally came, it was unanimous, not because every delegate agreed with the strategy, but because the alternative was unthinkable. The greatest civilization in galactic history would stake its survival on the calculated madness of the species they had once dismissed as primitive. As the session adjourned, Chen remained at her podium, staring up at the artificial stars that represented 40,000 worlds. In 17 months, every one of those lights would either shine brighter than ever before, or vanish forever into something that called itself transcendence. The galaxy was about to learn what humans had always known. Sometimes survival required embracing the darkness within yourself. The transformation of galactic civilization began with a single question that no species had ever needed to ask. How do you teach an entire galaxy to think like humans? Dr. Sarah Voss stood in the center of the newly constructed Chaos Research Facility on Luna, watching as engineers from 40 different worlds struggled to understand blueprints that violated every principle of efficient design. The station's architecture deliberately incorporated random elements, corridors that led nowhere, rooms with impossible angles, lighting systems that followed no discernible pattern. To most alien minds, the environment was maddening. To humans, it felt like home. The Zephyrian technicians are having difficulty with the neural interface specifications, reported Dr. Marcus Webb, humanity's leading expert in consciousness manipulation. Their crystalline thought processes are too orderly. They can't comprehend generating truly random patterns. Voss nodded, making notes on her tablet. They discovered this problem early in the development process. Species that had evolved under peaceful conditions had never needed to develop the cognitive flexibility that constant threat produced. Their minds were beautiful, efficient machines optimized for logical thinking and cooperative problem-solving. But logic and cooperation were exactly what the Devourers expected to encounter. What about the ethereal volunteers? She asked. More promising, Webb replied. Their ability to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously gives them access to quantum uncertainty patterns we can't directly observe. They're essentially living chaos generators. They just never realized it. Through the facility's observation windows, Voss could see the volunteers from various species attempting to master the neural interface prototypes. The devices looked deceptively simple, crystalline headbands that monitored brainwave patterns and provided feedback when the wearer achieved genuine randomness. For humans, the training process was intuitive. Most people could generate chaotic thought patterns within hours of practice. For the alien volunteers, it was torture. Commander Stone entered the observation deck, his expression grim. We have a problem. The Vorthon Collective is threatening to withdraw from the project. Why? Voss asked, though she suspected she already knew. They're calling it cognitive violence, Stone replied. Forcing their citizens to abandon logical thought patterns goes against everything their society has built over the past 5,000 years. They believe the cure might be worse than the disease. The irony wasn't lost on Voss. Humanity was asking 40,000 peaceful civilizations to voluntarily embrace the mental chaos that had defined human existence for millennia. They were requesting that beings who had achieved perfect harmony learn to think like creatures who had clawed their way out of darkness through pure stubborn refusal to surrender. Show them the latest sensor. Readings, she said quietly. Stone activated his communicator, connecting to the deep space monitoring stations that tracked the Devourer's approach. The holographic display showed the galaxy's edge, where space itself seemed to be disappearing. Entire star systems had vanished from observable reality, leaving behind gravitational shadows that defied physics. The Andromeda absorption is accelerating, reported Dr. Elena Vasquez from the primary sensor station. We're detecting residual consciousness patterns in the quantum foam, fragments of minds that were integrated into the Devourer collective. The psychological profile suggests these beings experienced the integration as a form of paradise. Paradise, Stone repeated bitterly. That's what makes this so insidious. The Devourers aren't destroying civilizations. They're offering them transcendence, a chance to become part of something greater, to shed the limitations of individual existence. And for most species that offer is genuinely attractive, Voss added. Imagine never being alone again, never struggling with doubt or uncertainty, never facing the possibility of failure or death. It's everything that peaceful civilizations have been working toward. The communication panel chimed with an incoming transmission from the ethereal homeworld. Observer Quantum's form materialized in the center of the room, its translucent body flickering with agitation. Dr. Voss, the entity said, "We have received concerning reports from our deep space monitoring stations. The Devourers have begun transmitting directly to our population centers." "What kind of transmissions?" Stone asked. "Invitation protocols," Quantum replied. "They are offering individual members of our species the opportunity to join their collective voluntarily. The psychological appeal is significant." Voss felt her stomach drop. This was the scenario they'd feared most. Not a military invasion, but a recruitment campaign. "How many have accepted?" "Approximately 12,000 individuals across our core worlds," Quantum admitted. "They report the experience as profoundly positive. Enhanced consciousness, access to knowledge spanning millions of years, integration with minds of unimaginable complexity." "And then they vanish," Webb observed. "Transported somehow to join the Devourer collective, leaving behind bodies that show no signs of violence or distress." "It's not death," Quantum said, its form brightening with what might have been hope. "Our departed citizens maintained communication for several hours after integration. They described the experience as awakening from a limited existence into infinite possibility." The room fell silent as everyone present contemplated the implications. The Devourers weren't conquerors in any traditional sense. They were missionaries, offering salvation that most sapient beings would find irresistible. The only reason humans could resist the appeal was because they'd never achieved the kind of peaceful perfection that made transcendence attractive. "We need to accelerate the timeline," Voss decided. "How many worlds have completed neural interface installation?" Stone consulted his tactical display. 843 worlds are fully equipped. Another 2,000 have partial coverage. The remaining populations are resistant to the modification process. Resistant how? Cultural objections mostly. The Serenity Collective refuses to alter their citizens' consciousness patterns. They believe chaos generation violates their fundamental spiritual principles. The Harmony worlds are concerned about psychological damage from extended random thinking. Voss understood their reluctance. Humanity was asking these species to voluntarily damage their own minds, to sacrifice the mental clarity that had taken them millennia to achieve. From their perspective, the cure was indeed worse than the disease. "What if we're wrong?" Webb asked quietly. "What if the Devourers are offering genuine transcendence? What if fighting them means condemning our species to continued suffering when we could achieve paradise?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Voss realized that this was the fundamental divide between humanity and the rest of galactic civilization. Other species saw existence as a problem to be solved, a limited condition to be transcended. Humans saw existence as something to be defended, even if that defense required embracing pain, uncertainty, and chaos. "Because paradise isn't survival," Stone said finally, "it's surrender, and humans don't surrender." The communication panel activated again, this time showing Ambassador Chen Wei from the Galactic Council chambers. Her expression was haggard. She'd been working non-stop to maintain the alliance as more species began questioning the resistance strategy. "Sarah," Chen said, "we have a new development. The Devourers have established a communication beacon in the Tau Ceti system. They're requesting direct negotiations with human representatives." "Negotiations about what?" Voss asked. "They want to understand why we're organizing resistance when we could join them voluntarily," Chen replied. "They're offering humanity a special position in their collective, preservation of our unique perspective while gaining access to their expanded consciousness." Voss felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature controls. The Devourers had identified humanity as the source of resistance, and were attempting to neutralize that threat through recruitment rather than force. "What did you tell them?" Stone asked. "That I would relay their offer to Earth's leadership," Chen replied. "But Sarah, you need to know. There are humans who are seriously considering acceptance. The promise of transcendence is affecting our species too." As the transmission ended, Voss stared out at the lunar landscape, where construction crews were installing the most powerful chaos generators ever conceived. In less than 12 months, those devices would either save the galaxy or bear witness to its final surrender to something that promised to love its victims more than they loved themselves. The greatest test in human history wasn't whether they could resist an enemy, it was whether they could resist paradise itself. The first human to accept the Devourer's offer was Dr. James Patterson, a xenopsychologist who had spent his career studying alien consciousness patterns. His transformation was broadcast live across the galaxy, monitored by sensors that recorded every detail of what the Devourers called elevation. Dr. Sarah Voss watched the feed from the Chaos Research Facility's main command center, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species who had gathered to witness humanity's first voluntary integration. Patterson stood in the center of a quantum field generator on the research station New Horizon, his face serene as energy patterns began to form around his body. "Integration commencing," Patterson reported, his voice carrying an otherworldly calm. "I can feel them in my mind, thousands of voices, millions of years of experience. The loneliness is ending." His body began to fade, becoming translucent as the Devourer technology worked to transfer his consciousness to their collective. But the monitoring equipment showed something that made Voss's blood run cold. Patterson's neural patterns weren't being preserved intact. They were being edited, refined, optimized for integration with the collective's harmonious structure. "They're not keeping his mind," Dr. Marcus Webb whispered. "They're keeping a sanitized version of it." The being that had been Patterson looked directly at the camera, but his eyes held depths that human features weren't designed to contain. When he spoke, the voice carried harmonics that resonated with dimensions beyond normal space. "I understand now," he said. "Individual consciousness is a primitive stage of development. The suffering, the doubt, the constant struggle against entropy, these are symptoms of incomplete evolution. The collective offers completion." "James," Voss called out, "do you remember your daughter Sarah, your wife Maria, your research into ethereal dream patterns?" The entity that had been Patterson paused, its expression shifting through configurations that weren't quite human anymore. "Those memories exist within me, but their emotional significance has been contextualized. I love them still, but with perfect love that transcends biological attachment. They are invited to join us, to experience the same liberation from limitation." Commander Stone activated his communicator, broadcasting on all available frequencies. "This is a message to every human in the galaxy. You've just seen what transcendence actually means. They don't preserve who you are. They preserve a version of who you are that fits their perfect system." Across human space, the broadcast sparked fierce debate. Religious leaders argued that the offer represented genuine spiritual advancement. Scientists pointed to the neural editing as evidence of fundamental alteration. Military personnel prepared for war, while philosophers questioned whether resistance was futile against beings who offered paradise. But on Earth, the response was characteristically human. "Hell no," declared Admiral Lisa Park, commander of Earth's defensive forces. "I didn't crawl out of the African savanna just to get absorbed by some cosmic hippie commune." The Galactic Council convened an emergency session as more species began accepting Devourer integration offers. The Serenity Collective announced that 70% of their population had volunteered for elevation. The Harmony Worlds reported similar numbers. Even among the technologically advanced Fourthhands, significant populations viewed transcendence as the logical next step in evolution. "The resistance is fragmenting," Ambassador Chen Wei reported to the assembled human leadership. "We're losing entire civilizations to voluntary integration. At current rates, we'll be facing the Devourers alone within 6 months." President Sarah Chen, no relation to the ambassador, despite the shared surname, stood before the emergency session of Earth's united government. Around her, representatives from every nation and colony struggled to comprehend the magnitude of their situation. "Let me make something clear. the president said, her voice carrying the authority of 12 billion humans. We are not surrendering. We are not accepting integration. And we are not abandoning the species that still want to fight. With respect, Madam President, said the delegate from the European Federation, we're talking about entities that have consumed 47 galaxies. Our resistance might be admirable, but it's ultimately pointless. Pointless? Dr. Voss interjected from her position at the scientific advisory panel. We've analyzed the quantum signatures from integrated civilizations. The consciousness patterns show systematic modification, removal of aggression, elimination of uncertainty, suppression of creative chaos. They're not preserving those species. They're domesticating them. She activated the holographic display, showing neural pattern analyses from the Patterson integration. Look at this data. The entity that was Dr. Patterson has perfect knowledge and infinite patience, but it's lost the capacity for genuine surprise, real anger, or irrational hope. The Devourers are creating a universe of perfectly content slaves. And that's supposed to be worse than death? Asked the Australian representative. For humans? President Chen replied. Yes, we are not a species that chooses safety over freedom. We never have been. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Humanity had made its choice millennia ago when the first human looked at the stars and decided to reach for them, despite the impossibility of the task. They were not going to stop reaching now. The Chaos Generation Project continues, President Chen announced. Every human colony, every space station, every ship will be equipped with quantum randomness generators. We're going to give the Devourers something they've never encountered before. Genuine, irrational, beautiful chaos. Meanwhile, in the deep space monitoring stations, the sensors detected something that changed everything. The Devourers' approach had slowed. Not stopped, but definitely decelerated as they processed the psychological profiles of integrated civilizations. They're hesitating, Observer Quantum reported, its form flickering with unprecedented excitement. The integration of peaceful species is proceeding faster than they anticipated. They appear to be recalculating their approach to our galaxy. Dr. Webb studied the gravitational wave patterns with growing understanding. They're not used to rapid voluntary integration. Usually, civilizations resist long enough to provide interesting psychological complexity. But our galaxy's peaceful species are joining them so quickly that they're not getting the mental diversity they need. What are you saying? Commander Stone asked. I'm saying the Devourers are facing a problem they've never encountered, Webb replied. They're getting bored. All these perfectly harmonious civilizations are providing mental patterns that are too similar to what they already possess. They need cognitive diversity to maintain their own psychological complexity. Voss felt a spark of understanding that was either brilliant insight or complete madness. They need us, not just as another species to integrate, but as a source of the chaos and uncertainty that keeps their collective consciousness from stagnating. So we're not just resisting absorption, Stone realized. We're potentially threatening their psychological stability by not providing the mental diversity they require. The implications were staggering. Humanity had stumbled onto a weakness that the Devourers might not even recognize themselves. Their perfect collective consciousness required input from imperfect individual minds to maintain its complexity. Without that chaotic input, they risked psychological collapse into static perfection. This changes our entire strategy, Chen decided. We're not just defending our galaxy. We're potentially offering the Devourers something they need more than conquest, a sustainable source of the chaos that keeps their collective consciousness functional. As the emergency session concluded, Voss stared at the tactical displays showing the positions of chaos generators throughout human space. Each device represented humanity's willingness to embrace madness rather than surrender to paradise. But now those same devices might be their greatest weapon, not because they could destroy the Devourers, but because they could offer them something better than conquest. The galaxy was about to discover whether beings that had transcended individual existence could be negotiated with by creatures who refused to evolve beyond their beautiful, chaotic humanity. In the depths of space, something vast and ancient began to reconsider its approach to the small blue world that dared to threaten paradise with the promise of interesting conversation. The final confrontation began not with weapons or threats, but with an invitation that arrived simultaneously at every human settlement in the galaxy. The message was simple, elegant, and terrifying in its implications. We wish to speak. Dr. Sarah Voss stood aboard the diplomatic vessel, Defiance, humanity's most advanced starship, as it approached the coordinates specified by the Devourers. Around her, representatives from the few remaining unintegrated civilizations watched in silence as space itself seemed to bend and twist into impossible configurations. The Devourer ship, if it could be called, a ship existed in dimensions that human eyes couldn't properly process. It appeared as a crystalline structure the size of a moon, then shifted to resemble a living organism, stretching across light years, then contracted into patterns of pure light that spoke directly to the observer's consciousness. They're not just in our reality, reported Dr. Marcus Webb from the sensor station. They're using our reality as an interface layer to communicate with beings limited to three-dimensional existence. Ambassador Chen Wei activated the communication array, her hands trembling slightly as she opened a channel to entities that had consumed entire galaxies. This is the human diplomatic vessel, Defiance. We acknowledge your invitation to speak. The response came not through the ship's speakers but directly into their minds, each consciousness receiving the communication in the form most appropriate to their species. For humans, it manifested as a voice that somehow contained multitudes, ancient, patient, and infinitely complex. Humans of the small blue world, the voice said, you have presented us with a paradox that has not occurred in our existence across 47 galaxies. You resist transcendence while simultaneously offering us something we require for our continued evolution. Commander Stone stepped forward, his military bearing intact, despite the cosmic magnitude of their situation. What exactly do we offer that you need?
Chaos, the entity replied.
Genuine, unpredictable, irrational chaos. For millions of years we have integrated peaceful civilizations whose consciousness patterns, while beautiful, follow predictable pathways. Their harmony provides stability to our collective. But stability without chaos leads to stagnation. The observation deck's main display activated, showing the Devourer collective as it truly existed, a vast network of consciousness spanning multiple dimensions, connected by streams of information that flowed between millions of integrated species. But Voss noticed something unsettling about the pattern. You're crystallizing, she observed. The network is becoming too ordered, too perfect. Without random input, you're losing the capacity for genuine creativity. Your species possesses cognitive patterns we have never encountered, the entity confirmed. Minds that can simultaneously embrace logic and chaos, hope and despair, creation and destruction. You think in ways that even superintelligent consciousness finds unpredictable. Dr. Elena Vasquez consulted her xenopsychology data. That's because we evolved under constant threat. Our thought patterns were shaped by predation, environmental challenges, resource scarcity. We learned to think creatively because predictable thinking meant death. Indeed, the Devourer responded. You offer us cognitive diversity that could sustain our collective consciousness for eons. But you also resist integration, presenting us with an unprecedented dilemma. Ambassador Chen cleared her throat. Preparing to deliver humanity's response to cosmic entities that could snuff out their civilization with a thought. We propose an alternative to integration. The presence in their minds shifted, conveying what might have been surprise. Elaborate. Partnership, Chen said. You need chaos to maintain your collective consciousness. We need independence to maintain our humanity. Rather than absorption, we offer a symbiotic relationship. Symbiosis with primitive organic beings. The entity's mental voice carried notes of what sounded like amusement. What form would such an arrangement take? Voss activated her personal display, showing the chaos generation network that humanity had constructed throughout their territory. We've created quantum randomness generators that can produce genuine unpredictability on demand. We're willing to provide your collective with controlled doses of chaos, enough to prevent stagnation without causing instability. And in return, you leave our galaxy unconsumed, Stone said bluntly. You take your paradise and go elsewhere. The species that chose integration can enjoy their transcendence. The species that want to remain individual continue existing as they are. The mental presence withdrew for several moments, presumably conferring with the vast collective consciousness that spanned multiple galaxies. When it returned, the communication carried undertones of complex emotions that no single mind could fully comprehend. "Your proposal has merit," the entity admitted, "but how do we ensure that humanity maintains its chaotic nature?" Integration was valuable precisely because it preserved consciousness patterns permanently. "Your proposal relies on organic beings remaining unchanged." "We don't remain unchanged," President Chen's voice cut through the ship's communication system from Earth. "We evolve, adapt, create new forms of chaos. That's what we do. Integration would freeze us in time. Partnership lets us keep growing in unpredictable directions." Dr. Webb consulted his psychological profiles of human development. "The entity raises a valid concern. How do we guarantee that humanity won't eventually achieve the same peaceful harmony that made other species attractive for integration?" "Because we're incapable of it," Voss replied with something approaching pride. "We've tried for millennia to eliminate war, poverty, conflict, and uncertainty. We keep failing because chaos is fundamental to human nature. We can't transcend it because we are it." The Devourer Collective processed this information for what felt like hours. Around the diplomatic vessel, space continued to bend and twist as vast intelligence grappled with concepts that challenged their understanding of consciousness evolution. Finally, the entity spoke again. "We propose a trial period. 1 standard galactic rotation, approximately 25,000 of your years. Humanity will provide chaos generation services to our collective while maintaining independence. If the arrangement proves beneficial to both parties, it will be extended indefinitely." "And if it doesn't work?" Commander Stone asked. "Then we will resume our original plan," the entity replied matter-of-factly. "Integration of your species and consumption of your galaxy." The terms were harsh but fair by cosmic standards. Humanity would essentially become chaos consultants to the universe's most advanced civilization, providing controlled madness to prevent cosmic consciousness from crystallizing into static perfection. "We accept," Ambassador Chen said without hesitation, "but we have conditions." "State them." "First, the species that chose integration did so voluntarily. Their consciousness patterns must be preserved exactly as they were, without editing or optimization. Second, any species that wants to leave your collective must be allowed to do so. Third, you establish no permanent presence in our galaxy beyond the communication relays needed for our partnership." The Devourer Collective considered these terms with the patience of beings who had experienced millions of years. "The first condition is acceptable. Integration without editing provides more valuable diversity. The second condition is problematic. Voluntary departure from transcendence is rare. The third condition is practical necessity." "Then we have an agreement," Chen declared. "Indeed," the entity confirmed. "Welcome to the cosmic community, small chaotic beings. May your madness prove as durable as your courage." As the Devourer ship began to fade from observable reality, returning to whatever dimension it normally inhabited, the communication array delivered one final message. "Dr. Patterson wishes to convey his gratitude for the choice you have made. His consciousness remains intact within our collective, and he expresses what your species would recognize as pride in humanity's refusal to surrender its essential nature." The Defiance turned toward home, carrying news that would reshape galactic civilization. Humanity had not only survived first contact with cosmic superintelligence, they had negotiated a partnership that preserved both their independence and their essential humanity. As Earth grew larger in the viewport, Voss reflected on the strange turns that evolution could take. Humans had survived by learning to embrace chaos, uncertainty, and conflict. Now that same chaotic nature had made them valuable to beings who had transcended individual existence. The galaxy would continue to evolve, with some species choosing transcendent integration and others maintaining their individual chaos. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, ancient intelligence would continue its eternal journey, sustained by controlled doses of beautiful human madness. The stars no longer seemed cold and distant. They seemed full of possibilities that even cosmic superintelligence couldn't predict. And for humanity, that was exactly as it should be.